An improvised bomb apparently targeting a police vehicle exploded near a mosque in the western Pakistani city of Quetta. Officials said the blast killed at least 4 policemen and injured 11. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is the Pakistan wing of the Taliban, claimed responsibility for the blast in an email statement. This comes just days after the same terror group claimed an attack on police guarding the Data Darbar in Lahore. Three explosions ripped through the Afghan provincial city of Jalalabad. 4 people were killed in the blast, 20 others were injured. Authorities said that all of the casualties were believed to be civilians. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack yet. This comes after the United Nations, in fact, expressed grave concerns about the increase in violence around the country during the first week of Ramadan. Both the Taliban and an Islamic State affiliate operate in the Nangarhar province, of which Jalalabad is the capital. US President Donald Trump said that he will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin at the G20 gathering in Japan next month. Trump said his meeting with Xi could be fruitful. Trump added his administration was planning to provide about $15 billion in aid to help U.S. farmers whose products may be targeted with tariffs by China. He did not provide any more details on what kind of an aid package it would be. Remember, China has said it would impose higher tariffs on a range of U.S. goods, including frozen vegetables and liquefied natural gas. Saudi Arabia said that maritime operations at the Fujairah port is normal in spite of the attack on 4 oil tankers off its coast. Authorities described the attack as an attempt to undermine the security of crude supplies amid tensions between the United States and Iran. The UAE on Monday identified the vessels as a very large crude carrier tanker. Now, the Amjad and crude tanker Al Marzuka. Now, both these vessels were owned by Saudi shipping firm Bahari. The other 2 were UAE-flagged fuel bunker barge A. Michelle and Norwegian registered oil products tanker MT Andrew Victory. The EU High Representative and Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Mogherini said that EU will continue to fully endorse the Iran nuclear deal. The official said that EU hopes that all parties avoid further escalation of the dispute around the nuclear deal. This comes after the top official held a meeting at the European Council headquarters in Brussels, in which she spoke with the officials from Britain, France and Germany. Mogherini said that the IAEA remains the only body that can verify whether Iran is compliant with its nuclear commitments. Sri Lankan authorities have enforced a 6-hour countrywide curfew as communal violence continues to spread in the island nation. The country's Kurunegala district armed gangs have reportedly targeted shop owners by Muslims. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has appealed for calm after the unrest broke out. The Lankan government on Monday also reimposed a ban on social media following violent incidents between the minority Muslim and majority Sinhalese communities in the country. The island nation has been on edge ever since the Easter Sunday bombings killed over 250 people. Actress Felicity Huffman pleaded guilty to paying to rig a college entrance exam for her daughter. This is part of a wide-ranging U.S. college admissions scam that involved wealthy parents using fraud to secure their children's spots at prominent U.S. universities. Huffman pleaded guilty in federal court in Boston to a conspiracy charge related to her payment of $15,000 to have someone secretly correct her daughter's answers on the SAT exam. Huffman stressed that her daughter did not know about the crime. U.S. presidential candidate Joe Biden took a dig at U.S. President Donald Trump for his ties with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking at New Hampshire, Biden said, and I quote, "We are embracing dictators. The president is embracing oligarchs. The president is in the business of calling his good friend Vladimir Putin on his private calls," unquote. Biden has accused Trump of alienating longtime U.S. allies, saying that Trump is poking a finger in the eye of U.S. allies. Biden, the current front-runner among the crowded field of Democrats seeking to become the party's nominee. British Foreign Minister Jeremy Hunt said that a post-Brexit Britain would never make foreigners feel unwelcome. Speaking at a dinner for foreign ambassadors in London, Hunt said Brexit must deal with the concerns of 48% of people who voted to stay in Europe as well as those who voted to leave. Hunt said that throughout the history of Britain, the country has opened its doors to people from all over the world, and that Britain after Brexit will never, quote-unquote, pull up the drawbridge or haul down the shutters or put up a sign saying foreigners are not welcome. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said that Beijing-Moscow relations would not be subject to any foreign influence. Wang's comments came after a meeting with Russian President Putin in Sochi. Putin and Wang also discussed the upcoming visit of Chinese leader Xi Jinping to Russia. Xi is expected to take part in the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum on June 6th to June 8th. In Albania, opposition protesters hurled firecrackers and smoke bombs at police officers. Some protesters, including a group wearing masks, hurled objects at officers guarding the entrance of the government building and later at the police headquarters. This is the latest 3-month-long demonstration calling for Prime Minister Edi Rama to quit over alleged election fraud and corruption. The European Union has warned that rebel strongman Khalifa Haftar's forces in Libya are a threat to international peace. A statement released by the EU Foreign Affairs Council said, and I quote here, "The LNA military attack on Tripoli and the subsequent escalation in and around the capital constitutes a threat to international peace and security and further threatens the stability of Libya. Libya has been plunged into chaos ever since Khalifa Haftar's forces began an offensive to take over Libya in April. Clashes between the UN-backed government army and rebel forces have left at least 100 people dead." Fighting in Syria's northwestern Idlib province still continues. Government forces are attempting to wrest control of the territory from rebel forces. Footage uploaded on social media shows bombs falling over Idlib. The recent military escalation in the province has led to the death of at least 120 civilians. The UN has said the region is home to 3 million people, half of whom have already fled their homes at least once during the conflict, and that a big battle there risks causing a new humanitarian disaster. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin has granted more time to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to put together a new coalition government. This after the initial 28 days following last month's elections expired. Israeli law dictates that after the first 4 weeks of political bargaining, a further 14 days is granted by the president on request. Iran announced the sentencing of an Iranian woman to 10 years in prison for spying for Britain. A judiciary spokesman said on the state television that the woman was in charge of projects for cultural infiltration in Iran. He did not identify her but said she was a student in Britain before being recruited by the British Council. Police in Germany have found bodies of 2 women and who had died in a mysterious case involving crossbows. The mysterious deaths could be linked the deaths of 3 other people involving crossbows near the Austrian border. All victims are German citizens. More than 7 decades after World War II ended, more than 300 tiny pieces of human tissue from political prisoners executed by the Nazis are finally buried at a Berlin cemetery. Descendants of the victims attended a multi-religious ceremony before the remains were finally laid to rest at a Berlin cemetery. Hundreds of homes were flooded in Bosnia after torrential rains in the northern and central parts of the country. The towns of Maglac, Kazin and Bosanska and Krupa have been hardest hit with fresh flooding as summer. In fact, the rivers burst their banks. Footage from Kazin showed people attempting to keep the water out of their homes. Bosanska Krupa declared a state of emergency of natural disaster late on Monday. Unusually cold and rainy conditions are forecast to continue in Bosnia over the coming days. Authorities have also braced for further flooding. Around 300 competitors slipped and dragged themselves through a riverbed in the annual Maldon Mud Race in the UK. The race, which was first held in 1973 in the coastal town of Maldon, about 50 kilometers northeast of London. It attracts entrants from across Europe who wade through the mud of the river Blackwater at low tide in fancy dress to raise money for charity, though at least one competitor found himself without his costume by the end. Chinese authorities released 37 spotted seal pups that rescued from traffickers back into the ocean. According to Chinese state media, police discovered the spotted seals inside a farm shed in February. Authorities have already released a total of 61 rescued spotted seals back into the wild, each of them with tracking devices attached to the authorities can monitor their movements. 29 of the pups found in the shed were in fact couldn't be saved and died of malnutrition. Heavy storms are wreaking havoc in Bosnia and Croatia. Croatian authorities have restricted traffic on several roads in the country and warned of landslide danger. Wind speeds reached 150 kilometers per hour in some areas. In neighboring Bosnia, heavy rains have swollen rivers, flooding dozens of houses and some roads in the northwestern areas. Authorities in Serbia also warned of upcoming heavy rains that could cause small rivers to overflow. The region was hit by massive flooding in 2014 when dozens of people died. Scientists in the United States have detected the highest levels of planet-warming carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere since records began. An observatory in Hawaii, which has tracked atmospheric CO2 levels since the late 1950s, detected 415.26 parts per million. It was also the first time on record that the observatory measured a daily baseline above 415 ppm. The last time Earth's atmosphere contained this much CO2 was more than 3 million years ago, when global sea levels were several meters higher and parts of Antarctica were blanketed in forest.